Today, we are following really up from a discussion or a couple of discussions that we've had recently about building portfolio careers, about women on boards. And you'll remember a few weeks ago, we had a brilliant speaker, Fiona Hawthorne from Women on Boards, come and talk to us and give us some advice about your portfolio careers and starting a career in the sector. Tina is joining us today, one of our members, and Tina started her, give us a wave, Tina, say hello. Hello. Tina started her career, her not-for-profit, her NED, her trustee career about 10 years ago, and is now on a wide range of boards and has got a wide range of interests along with her day job. So Tina, welcome.
Thank you.
Tina, let's start off. Your first role was with Comic Relief. Why Comic Relief? What did you do there? What were they looking for? Why?
There's a long story. Thank you for the opportunity, everyone. Really nice to meet you all. And if you have any questions, just give me a shout, and happy to connect with anyone offline if they want to follow up. So why Comic Relief? Actually, there was a sort of specific for me. So in my early career after university, I spent 12 weeks in Africa doing something called Operation Rally or Rally International, which is an expedition to Zimbabwe I went to. So I sort of had a passion for that kind of what I saw there, I felt was not really what we should see. And so that's really why Comic Relief. And actually, I just approached Comic Relief initially and built a relationship to volunteer with them and did some pro bono work. And then I just continued to want to help them. So I think the message here is, if you want to get involved in anything actually in life, it's not just your non-exec career, you need to really be motivated by what they're doing, because I think that makes you better at it. I don't think anyone wants to be in an environment where they don't really believe in the values or the organizational dynamics. And so that was why Comic Relief, really. I just felt a strong passion. They were particularly prominent in Africa development and aid. And I spent some time building a relationship, and that's how I came on board. And I guess my other motivation was I very specifically wanted to get a not-for-profit role. And so that was really, I felt it was something that would aid my career, which I think we'll go on to talk about later.
Yeah. So the intention was to build a portfolio career. But apart from Operation Raleigh, no real experience of charity work. And maybe you're a stand-up comedian, but I don't think you are. So where were the skill sets? What do they
look for? So I think I had the intention maybe of a portfolio career, but I think the other thing is that I was just ambitious in my exec career, actually. And if you work in a large organization, sometimes the opportunities to lead is not always there, and to get diverse experience. So Comic Relief, any charity, what are they looking for? They're looking for business people with broad skill sets, a diverse background, and good people, and I mean that in a general term, to help. So, finance, legal, fundraising, networking, HR, communications, strategy, digital transformation. Any organization, be it an exec, non-exec, are looking for those skills. And I think you just, specifically Comic Relief at the time was looking for a finance skill set. And I come with I'm a qualified accountant in my early career. So my career started in commerce as a qualified accountant, and then I did that for a few years working at Coca Cola as a finance manager, and then I moved into banking, and I've been a COO ever since. So with a COO, you get you get very broad skill sets and operational risk and governance, strategy, development, technology. So it's not really about the charity piece. They're not looking for someone who knows a charity in many ways. They're looking for what you bring as a person to supplement the committee or the board you join, to get a diverse background and better decision making and better organizational dynamics.
Okay, so what's the starting out for everybody on the call here? What are the initial tips? How do you get started? How do you get going?
So for me, I think the first thing is just to not think there's any barriers. So just because you haven't got a if you're not sort of at the top of your organization, or that doesn't stop you, because there is massively a drive now in the sector to make sure that we have a diverse and inclusive workforce. So first of all, don't think there's a barrier. I think everyone at relative stages in their career are ready. You don't have to be at the, an MD in order to join the charity sector, et cetera, talking banking language. I would start out a couple of things. I would talk to people like me, people who've done it, to get your network. First of all, we talked about the benefit of networking in everything we do, exec and non-exec. So doesn't change. And I would talk about assessing yourself. So if you look at many of the charity or trustee or exec roles, you'll see a new role does it quite well, actually, is it says what skills the role needs. And almost you can build up, and I think Women on Boards has a great skills ladder for it as well. You can build up your skill set. So you can sit and say, I'm Tina and I've got finance, I've got legal, but I've never done sales and marketing, for instance. So once you build up your skill set, then when you look for the adverts, or you contact organizations, or you see them, and there's many places now that advertise these roles. It comes to mind Women on Boards. There's something called BAME, which is really promoting diversity of advertising. If you're interested in the sports sector, there's Sporting Equals, advertise roles. If you're interested in government roles, there's a National Public Appointments website. NHS, all NHS adverts have to go on there, for instance. And so when you've got your kind of skills, then you can see the roles that are being advertised, be it paid or non-paid. And then you have to think about where you want to be. So do you want to be in a sector that interests you? So I chose comic relief for that motivation, and I've been in sporting organisations for the motivation sport and arts interest me, and the value of youth development. Some people might be interested in medical type activities there. Some might be interested in policy related document, so what interests you, and therefore you can match your skills to what's out there, and then take that process of applying. And the other thing that, Fiona will do it much better than me, but you need like a proper CV that's targeting these things. And that's an exercise that you really need to go through, because your CV in a working environment is quite different to a CV in a board environment. So it talks about skills, and it talks about what you bring to the table. It's sort of different to, normally your traditional CV will say, I worked here and this is my grade, and this is my position and I achieved this. So think about that as well. So I think you have to be active in it. And I think it doesn't have to be for a portfolio career, but it is helpful, I think, but it also can be to help your board career, your exec career. You can be trying to get to the next level of promotion, and you can use this to show that you're working in an environment, a different environment. You put yourself out of your comfort zone to learn about an organization. I've worked in charity, some of my trustee roles, because you're sitting in the board, you see everything. My prior experience, I've been at HSBC, JP Morgan and Coca Cola. Very difficult to see everything that goes on in that size organization. So the breadth of experience that I've gained, I don't think I'd have got that in my exec career. So it's been very helpful from that perspective. So first of all, before we move on, everybody, if you want to ask a question, just ask, put your hand up, or come off mute, and let's get some questions going. And Tina's here to help us at the end absolutely. Of the day. Sitting on a board, the formalities of sitting on a board are very different from the formalities of running and leading a small team, or what was the challenges you faced there, and what did you see and what did you learn? Yeah, I think when you sit on a board, you realize, first of all, that you can't be an exec. So you're not part, there is a sort of arm's length relationship, and it's really important to maintain that, because if you don't operate as this kind of trusted critical friend, you will end up stepping too far, and sometimes that doesn't create good governance because you don't have enough segregation, but also it can be too consuming, do you know what I mean? And it becomes part of your, so you need to realize you need to adapt your style, I think, to feel that you are part of the organization, but in a different way to being an exec. I think that's the first thing. I think you need to learn the basics of governance, if that makes sense. Once I'll just finish, and I can't see your name, but Amelie, yeah. And you need to learn the basics of good governance. So, like and that's experience. You can see papers and they don't help you make decisions. You can see the scope of things that aren't being covered that need to be or should be covered. So there's a little bit of experience, and then there's a piece and there's lots of information out there. There's a code, handbook for new trustees, and all those sorts of things with the Charity Commission. There's definitely some really sort of good reading, and this isn't talking reading War and Peace, to help you. And I think you need to build relationships. So my advice to any person starting in a new organization, which I think you do anyway, is you need to build trust and relationships with your team, and your team is the board in this case. And you don't see them every day, you don't work with them every day. So you need to work to build that relationship and go out of your comfort zone. And actually it can be really good for your career as a byproduct, because you're doing good and you're learning, but also you're expanding your network. And you never know, some of my job opportunities have come from my not-for-profit network. And I think Amelie has a question, and I haven't got my glasses on, so sorry if I've said your name wrong.
Go on, Amelie.
Go for it.
You said my name absolutely right. Tina, I was wondering, how do you go about approaching organizations which operate in something that interests you? What's the best way? Is it better to approach them directly, running the risk that this may fall completely flat because it lands on the wrong desk or not the right person? Or is it better to network before with the people who are helping out the organization?
So I don't think that differs in this scenario than it does in your normal exec career, or actually when you're trying to be successful in a big company. It's always better if you know someone. It's always better if the intro is made by someone, because one, they give you the inside track. And so actually you might not want to, once you know something, you might not want to know, right? So for example, I actually wrote to Comic Relief, the chairman at the time, and I was quite lucky how that cascaded into future relationships, but it might not have worked like that. So, so definitely who you know, definitely network, and actually you can target organizations, but actually be open to because there's so many out there that you don't know until you sort of, you know what I mean? So it's a bit like, oh yeah, Comic Relief sounds great because it's like #1 charity, one of the biggest charities in the UK and in England. But actually, it's not really my motivation. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's important. And I guess the really important thing is what do you want? So anyone will tell you when they go to a networking meeting, a person who doesn't have a well thought through argument about who they are, what they bring, and why they're doing it, those meetings aren't that effective, and they don't necessarily build future relationships. So you don't have to have all the answers, but be specific. I'm exploring opportunities because I want to be a trustee, and I think your organization interests me because, and it's much better than I just know your brand. It's a bit like I do some work for Bath University where I went for graduates, and some of them approach me for advice about working in banking, and they say to me, I want to work on a trading floor, and I say why, and they don't have a very strong answer to that question. So does that help? Perfect.
Thank you.
No worries, pleasure.
Thank you. Tina, you most of the firms and organizations that you're working for are on a national or global type scale. What about more local firms, local charities, school boards, local councils?
I think I've done both a little bit, right?
Okay.
You can start where you want to start. I think there's huge benefit. The NHS, for instance, and some are paid, some are not paid, is very trust based and is looking for people who understand live in the area because they understand the kind of conditions in their area for treatment and for how the NHS works. Definitely look local. One of my friends has started off as a school governor, and that's her first experience of governance, and it's a really good experience. So, and some small charities actually will give you better experience because they aren't so big. So they actually will give you that kind of breadth of experience. My first formal trustee role was a charity that was 1 to 2 million, that over the 8 years of my tenure, because as a trustee, you can only do it for so long, has gone through growth, a near-death experience, in change of strategy, and and now becoming a preferred sort of supplier to the sporting sector. You wouldn't get that, that experience and the challenges we as a board were asked to deal with during those kind of turbulent and good times. You wouldn't get that sometimes maybe if you went for the biggest kind of bang for your buck. So do think local, do think what you're interested in. There's tons of opportunity out there all the time being advertised for roles. I would be very surprised if anyone here would not find themselves a good role if they went out and looked for it, to be honest.
Thank you. So, Emily, is your hand up? Oh no, it's the cursor on my screen. Sorry, I do apologize. Some questions, Judith. Where are you in your journey here?
Yeah, my journey. I mean, really here, and that's so interesting, Tina. Thank you. I think, yeah. I mean, I'm probably thinking about this not right now, but for future. And I think, yeah, sort of getting to probably to that end of my career where I'm thinking about potentially building that portfolio. Mark, as you know, I've got my sort of BAU role, but I'm also chair of our Women on Work committee, and that's really sort of filling my time at the moment. But through my audit role, I'm sort of working sort of with exec, looking and actually been doing quite a lot around our executive, our exec committees, etc. So yes, it's becoming more interesting, and I think seeing this come up, it's definitely something that is piquing my interest. So really helpful, and I think what you've said about just thinking about our skill sets and thinking about our skills in a different way from our normal role,
yes,
is really helpful, and for me very much the sort of promoting diversity, women, thinking about those local charities. There's some really good hints and tips there.
And just one thing I would add to there's clearly you need time, right, to do this. So, and you need quality of life, right? So not everyone, you got to manage your time accordingly. But sometimes there's quite a lot of lead time in getting what you want. So it's kind of sort of almost like when you feel you're ready, you probably need to start a bit earlier, if that makes sense, is my experience and my colleagues' experience. I think the other thing to add to skills that we talked about in the pre-meet that's quite useful is most charities and most good governance, be it a charity or an exec, there's a structure to the governance to make sure it works. So you have the main board, and then you have subcommittees for audit, risk, finance. Sometimes they're converging. You normally have what's called a rem and noms, which is all about HR and payroll and performance of people. You sometimes have a fundraising, you sometimes have an operational committee, a programs type committee. You can have an innovation. So if you think about some of those, they may be precursors, and some only meet 4 times a year, so there may be stuff, I'm not just at you, but just generally that can help you as a footer. Like, for instance, the Dame Kelly Holmes Trust that I'm involved with is really interested at the moment in expanding its committees, attendees, and thinking about new members for what they call the programs committee, which deals with the kind of operational side of the activity.
Brilliant. I think just talking about time, and we're all challenged by it, and seeing the papers, the board papers that come through sort of within our organisation. I mean that would be my sort of question, that you get this board pack that is hundreds of pages long. No.
It's an ineffective board pack. I mean, exactly. It's another view. It's my own view, right? But I mean, I was reading for a committee paper this weekend, and the papers were 115 pages, and that I'm not in any committee, exec or non-exec, and as a COO, you know, governance is part of our responsibility. I don't know how that can be effective governance. And so I'm the one on the board who keeps saying reduce the papers.
But it's just about, you know, how, yes, with your day job then, and, you know, how you juggle that time. Clearly
always
saying no.
Yeah, completely. And some organizations, I don't know if where you all work, but some organizations do support this and give you time during your day. And if organizations do have that, it might be useful to explore that, because why not, you know, if it gives you that opportunity. But I agree, it's, you know, everyone's got their personal circumstances and they need to manage that how best for them.
Brilliant, thank you.
Judith, I'd add to that. Sorry, go on, someone's asking.
Sorry, it's Anne Sheedy.
Anne, hi.
Just wanted to ask a question. I'm not sure it's the right part of the meeting to ask this question, but I joined a small charity a little while back as treasurer, and they'd been around for quite a while, but they were really at the point where they needed to professionalise. They'd gotten quite a large grant from Hackney Council and were doing quite a bit more work. And it turned out, frankly, to be an awful experience, because there was a lot of resistance internally. It was quite an old guard, if you like, and then new people coming in, and some ideas were clashing. Ended up with the chairman being asked to leave, which was a mistake. They were absolutely excellent. And then myself and somebody else who joined about the same time, so about April last year, both resigned in November, December this year. Last year rather. So my question was, how do you cope with an organization that's going through dramatic change and is in a state of flux kind of at all levels? And how can you help it stop becoming quite toxic? And I'm conscious, you know, 2020 was a difficult year for many people in many ways, and that probably influenced actions, reactions that went on. But as somebody who was very new and basically at the sideline to a lot of it, and was given a lot of abuse, and was extremely naive, just some tips would be very helpful. I don't know if this is the right time to ask the question, so forgive me if not, but I'd really appreciate your thoughts.
No. I think there is always a level of risk when you enter an organization, right? Because you're never necessarily always going to know. I mean, you'll get that in your exec career, right? You're never necessarily going to know everything. You know, people do put out their best behavior, don't they, when you go through the interview process, and then when you arrive, you know, I've had a couple of shockers. You know, I arrive and the job I was offered wasn't actually the job the guy could offer me. You know, there's kind of that dynamic. I think for me, there's a couple of things, right? Do your research as much as you can, you know, and ask questions. And, you know, when you're joining boards or organizations, you're well within your rights. And I think more respected if you are open and ask questions of people. And actually, a question I always ask in every interview I've ever been in is, what's the best and worst thing about working in the organization? And actually people get quite surprised, because you're actually asking about a negative. And actually, I think that's important in a way, you know, because it's not saying you can't fix it. I think when you're in that, if you're in a really toxic environment, I think it's really important to understand the rules. So I would say when you join an organization, you should be briefed. And if you aren't, you should ask for the kind of rules of how the charity works or how the organization works, because you can use them to your benefit, you know. So if you have got a chairman who isn't performing and everyone, you should have a senior independent director who can step in and get involved with that, for instance. I think that common decency should prevail anything that you do, Anne. And at the end of the day, if you weren't receiving that, then sometimes the best thing you can do is to air your views and walk away. And actually, that's the strongest thing you can do. It's not failure. If individuals aren't acting professionally or appropriately, you know, and you and call it out, you know, I don't think it's different really. It's not personal. It shouldn't be personal. And I guess my advice always is to build and understand from other people. And I think in that scenario, making sure that you've got good relationships with the other board members to be a bit of a sounding board would be useful as well. I hope, does that help? I mean,
yeah, it does, and it's definitely some of the points you kind of said about having a sounding board, being very open and honest, and calling out behavior. I definitely did that, and other people who joined at the same time as me did that. I think maybe your points almost about due diligence right at the start are the ones I really need to pick on a little bit more. I was told it could be quite toxic. I think even the lady who interviewed me, the chairperson, hadn't quite realised how toxic and how bad it was. And maybe I should have dug more there. But that's really useful. Thank you.
No worries. I think also sometimes part of the challenge, and you need to decide if you're up for it, is that it may be not working very well and you've been asked to join because they want to make it better because you're different. And it's just about whether you've got the appetite to do that. So your organisation's probably in a better place now, but you were part of affecting change, which is actually a really good experience, right? But sometimes it's not easy and can be really hard work.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a little bit of cannon fodder, but at least it was me being the cannon fodder as opposed to somebody else.
Yeah, completely.
And I always look for, I do quite a lot of sort of pro bono work, and I always ask myself 3 questions. And Tina, I don't know whether you've got similar questions that you ask. And the first one is, do I believe in the mission? What is this organization doing, and what are they trying to achieve? Do I think the team that are there now can deliver that mission, and what difference will I make if I join? And just those 3 questions actually, you start asking them and you get some insightful answers, which sometimes say, no, I shouldn't be doing this, or this is perfect for me.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be exactly my approach. And I guess the only other one I'd ask is, why me? I think it's really important why they want you, if it's because they think you're good, you've got a great address book, that's not really, doesn't motivate me. Do you know what I mean? So I kind of ask that question as well.
Good. Abby, are you so I'm picking on you because you were leaning forward into your camera and as if you were about to say something. Where are you in your journey?
So I'm exploring, I'm transitioning really. I worked for JP Morgan for about 17 years, and last year just decided, no, I don't want to do this anymore. And I've just taken some time to really think about where I want to be for the next 10 years. Sort of building out a skill set is one of the things that I think I need to do, because having been slightly siloed in a role for a long time, whilst I feel like I have a lot of transferable skills, it's one of those things of how do I make that leap to make someone, take a risk, as it were, on me if I decide to go into different avenues. So I'm looking at also doing pro bono work and just going into areas that are of interest to me. So, for example, on the ESG side, sustainability and charity work as well, and then build it up from there and just explore. So I'm lucky I don't have to I don't have to worry as much financially. I'm in a good position, but I'm just using this as a period to just navigate the next 10 years a bit more thoughtfully than I have the last 17.
No, I mean, I think I think it's a great position to be in, first of all, and it sounds like you're kind of doing all the right things, and I think this kind of route is definitely will help you, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? Because I was at JP as well, right? And I've been at HSBC. I don't think anyone around who's on this call will actually want to just sit at home or not do anything. So whether you get paid or not is a different issue, but you want to do something with, you have to do something with your life, whether, even if you're, never need to work again, shall we say, or whatever your financial circumstances. So I think this may be this isn't the only route, as you said, it's an option. I think I really want to encourage people to do it because I think it's undervalued as a career option. I think it helps you, even if it's not your main option. But I would, happy to chat with anyone offline, but I would also look at Women on Boards has got some great resources to really help you think through the process. And that's quite a useful technique. They do some courses and things like that. And just helps you think about it. I think, you know, if you've been at JP 17 years, I'm not sure what area you're in, but you've clearly got skills to offer to other organizations. And I think it's making sure that the organizations are the right ones for you, actually, as much as you're the right one for them, right? So I think see it as a two-way process as well.
But your sort of point on building out your skill set, that for me is the bit that I'm trying to sort of work out. How do I best do that? So if I have a funding background, yes, I can play to that niche area. But as you look at all these roles, a lot of them are requiring accounting background or, and it's sort of, should I invest the time now in doing a SEMA qualification? Or is that actually a waste of time and I should just... Let's see.
Listen, I mean, without, it's not for me to offer you personal, I mean, I'm happy to talk to you offline about my experiences, but, you know, I mean, I think the point is that that if you build a network in the sector, you'll see where other people have used the skills and it might help you think it. So you've just said to me you have a funding background. In my mind, I would look at the investment advisory piece. I can't remember the exact name, but we can send it to you offline, Mark. Do you remember Annabelle represented? And they are always looking for, there's a lot of organizations that are looking for people who've got funding, treasury banking and background on their advisory committees or investment committees or on the board. So there is skills, I get it, that, you know, but it's just finding the right niche. So yeah, there are there. And maybe we can, I will find out the exact name for you, because I think that might be useful to you with a funding background.
Thank you.
Abby, as well, I would suggest having confidence in what you have done.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I think Tina said earlier on, used the example of meeting somebody at a networking conference and saying, I've spent 17 years at JP Morgan and I'm kind of exploring opportunities, isn't as great as, you know, I have these skill sets and I'm looking to take them somewhere, and this is why you might be interested in me and this is why I'm interested in you. I think Tina put it much better than I just did, but I think you take the point.
Positive positioning.
Yeah. Brilliant. Good. I'm sorry, I'm just going to also say locally as well. You know, completely one of my first roles was I joined the local council. Yeah. And it was my first board role as such. And I had no idea of all the formalities, this committee, that committee, this subsection, that subsection, and just sitting and seeing how that parish council was governed and how it operated was a complete eye-opener. And I spent about 6-7 years on the council and became chairman at the end. But it was a really interesting journey that taught me all about how boards work. And it was a local parish council, but it had to operate in a very formal way because it was a local government thing, which I just found really interesting. I had absolutely no skill sets apart from I lived in the village.
Yeah, but I challenge you on that, because you do have skill sets, because whatever, you know what I mean? Like, this is the thing. It's like, there's a difference between, you have this is what I think the mindset is the difference between the skill set and the experience in the sector. And I think we merged the two in our conversation. So, I've never worked in sport before, so therefore I can't be on a sports board, but I'm bringing skills in finance and operations. So I think but it's difficult because in our exec career, we're almost pushed into we've got to work in there to keep working in there. And in a non-exec, we've got to take all that take that all off and say, actually, no, we do. But I know what you mean. And you know what? You're never going to get the job where they want an exact replica of what they did and a parish councillor who'd done it 17 years in the past. So don't bother applying. You know what I mean? There's loads of other great stuff out there, I reckon.
And part of why they were looking for new talent, fresh.
Yeah.
I didn't have grey hair at the time, to come on board with fresh ideas and that passion, which you're right. Tina, so some of the other things that you're involved in, you mentioned Dame Kelly Holmes, and you've also just got a new role within British Rowing. What are you actually doing? What's your role in those two organisations?
So currently, so I have an exec job as well. So it is a bit of a juggling act. But in my non-exec world, I'm a trustee of 2 charities, and I'm on some advisory committees. And I'm just joined British Rowing. And what do I do? So I am. Let's talk about British Rowing because that's my newest role. So I targeted British Rowing because I'm interested in sport, and I wanted to transition from maybe a small organisation to something that had national influence. Be it grassroots participation, but also up to elite level. So British Rowing, I applied for the role, and I'm chair of their finance committee, and I'm joining the board. And I guess my role is, my involvement is participation in meetings and, the pre-papers periodically every couple of months. And really my role is to bring that skill set there, to be that trusted advisor, but critical friend, to make sure that a board's role is to make sure the organisation is hitting its strategy. It has a strategy, that it's well run, and that it's organised well and organised effectively and meet the needs. So a national governing body for sport has membership. So the membership of British Rowing are the people who row every day, and they're ultimately our customers in that one. So my role joining that really is to make sure that we're financially sound. British Rowing in the past hasn't made a profit, for want of a better word, a surplus in prior years, and to make sure that I want to make sure that we grow rowing as a sport, and it's a more diverse sport. Actually, I think people will see rowing as more of a traditional public school, university type experience. But actually they do stuff with indoor rowing that people don't massively know about. And they also offer grants to state schools to come and use rowing facilities. So there's a whole piece around diversification, around participation. And as part of the board, that's what I want to succeed in my 3-year term.
Yeah, thank you. Lilia, you're looking very engaged there, thoughtful. Do you have some questions?
I don't. I think it's very interesting. I mean, I was looking at it from a different angle because I've reached a point in my career. I've spent 30 years in corporate world, and then 2 years ago I decided to change and to go freelance and to do variety of jobs in business development for clients, but at the same time have some roles with not-for-profit organizations, on board or not on board, but not necessarily look at them as career, but more as enjoyable experiences. So I wasn't too excited about getting into the skills and mode in a way, but I see the point, your point, because you have a different perspective at the moment in your career as well. So it's just that thought. I was looking at it more as I have done stuff and I have those skills and I can use them, but I want to use them in an environment which is without pressure.
Yeah.
And also I feel like the kind of position that I'm in at the moment, with having the varieties and going into areas where I'm passionate about some aspects of the charity work, helps a lot, because as you said in the beginning, you take a distance with when you are in a corporate world, you don't realize how much pressure there is and how much personal investment there is. So you're always in it, and you always feel like if there is failure or if you're not achieving exactly what you wanted, it's your personal fault, or you take it personally. Whereas I feel like if you are doing the stuff that you like and on a board or as an advisor, you have that distance that forces you not to feel personally involved or guilty or whatever. And it's a huge relief.
Yeah, no, I mean, I
experience as well.
Completely understand. I think that my message today was to encourage people that it can give you exec benefits. It can also give you what you just said. So actually how I started off was really that. And, you know, so my personal motivation is both, right? I'm getting, and so actually for me, I think it's a bit win-win. I'm adding value to things I believe in, and I'm actually growing as an individual, whether it means I'm suddenly going to get the best role in the world next in my exec career, that's an aside. So, but I do think it's important that when you get involved in any organization that you feel passionate about it, because otherwise you're just not going to be happy, and that's really important. I do think you will feel more personally accountable than you think, because actually you get really into it, and you will, but it's not the same, you know. You're already successful when you're there, if that makes sense. So you're not in the same pressure of, you do get reviewed, to be fair. If good governance, you'll get reviewed, but it's not quite the same as, you know, working at JP, for instance, and every 3 months. I remember when I was at JP, every 3 months we had informal performance of our goods and bad. You know, it's maybe a better environment where you can see the end outcome more, maybe. And I think it's perfectly valid to do it for whatever motivation, but I think you'll all enjoy it and you'll grow, whether you do that to gain more exec roles or not. That's fine or not, you know. Yeah.
Tina, thank you. Thank you for your time today. Just wrapping a few things up, if that's okay. You've mentioned women on boards, and obviously a number of people on the call today were on the call a couple of weeks ago, where Fiona came along and talked about women on board activities. You should have also, if you're E2W members, received an email from Katie. At the end of the session with Fiona, we promised to go away and try and put together a special E2W Women on Boards workshop. Katie, you're going to come off mute and tell us about that if you can, because we've done that, and we're looking now to just make sure we can get the numbers. Is that right, Katie?
Yeah, so we're looking for minimum 20 members. It's a bespoke session for E2W members, so it'll be a closed group. So in that instance, it's quite intimate, it's quite nice, you know, you kind of know everyone already. And it will be a half-day session. And again, with the price, we are offering quite a competitive price rather than the Women on Board session, if you go direct to them, because of the kind of relationship that we have with them. So it is a really good offering. I sent out the email yesterday, but if you needed, if it's gone to your junk or anything like that, I can put it over to you again. Thank you, Katie.
And Tina, you've mentioned Women on Boards. What have you done with them, and what's your experience been?
I think I've got involved with quite a lot of different networking organizations and kind of tutorials, and obviously apart from E2W, I think they're great. So they, for me, they have, they're very practical in their advice. They have sort of different tools that help you at the stages of your sort of development and thinking. They offer personal help for interviews. So actually, I think that's very useful that they have a big network. And when I was interviewing for a role, the British Rowing role, actually, they introduced me to someone who has got experience in that sector. So they're really kind of quite, I think they're quite scientific, and they have a huge wealth of roles. So getting access to that in whatever way you can, if I'm honest, is really useful, because they consolidate a lot of different sources, and you can see charity paid roles. And even if you're not looking now, it kind of gives you help to understand what's out there and start to think about where you want to go. And so yeah, I think they're really useful, you know, as well as this. I think your network's really important. So yeah, I would strongly advise being proactive with those opportunities that Mark talked about in this course, because you don't know what you don't know, I think, and it just gives you great experience. And doesn't mean you have to suddenly become a trustee tomorrow, but it just gives you thinking that will help you in the future, because when you really need it, it does take more time than you think. And also, if you do want to end up in a portfolio career and you want to be paid, then you know that is a very competitive market at the moment. Lots of people, particularly, it was always competitive. It was always seen a little bit as a closed shop, but it's much more open now. But actually, given COVID, I think the dynamic of more people taking that choice earlier has also meant that there's a lot more. And also the other thing about the paid non-exec role is that people don't move around as much as they do in the exec world. So you can be on a board in both charity and non for 3-4 years, you know, whereas maybe execs are moving more frequently. So there isn't as much movement in the roles as well. So that would be my advice. I think there was a couple of follow-ups that I said I'd do that we'll send out, Mark, if you could help me, Katie. And as I said to everyone, if you want to chat, I'm very open to connecting and helping anyone.
Brilliant, Tina. Thank you. Thank you very much. If anybody wants info, obviously Katie or myself can help and do respond to or find Katie's email if you're interested in that Women on Boards workshop, which would be great. Any final questions for Tina? Any final thoughts from Tina?
No, I just wish you well on your journey and best wishes to everyone. Thank you for your time.
Brilliant. Tina, thank you very much. Before everyone goes, next week we've got our good friend Rebecca joining us to talk about really important subject, and I'm going through some of this now myself, about wills, lasting power of attorney, and how we make sure that we protect our wealth for our children, but also where I'm going through it now is with my parents, or with my mother. I lost my father, and just making sure that everything is in place, both financially and from a power of attorney perspective, so I can make decisions for her when she can no longer make decisions for herself. A really important subject. That's next week's coffee break. I'd also point out, I'm so excited about this. We're going to get the opportunity to meet you all. There's so many people on this call here today that we've made friends with over the last year, where we've organized our first in-person event. It's on the website. For those of you who joined some of the original coffee breaks, you might remember Peter Prescott joined us, who's the owner of the wine library in the city. Peter's kindly opened his doors for us, subject to regulations, etc., on the 24th of June, and given us some really good pricing. Obviously, there's a cost involved for us to go and take over the wine library one evening. It's on the 24th of June. It's on the website. It would be lovely to meet some of you in person. All of you in person, not just some of you. So come along and join that as well. Other than that, I'm going to say, Tina, brilliant. Thank you very much. Lovely. Thank you for your support. Brilliant E2W member. Everybody else, thank you. I'll be hanging around for a few minutes afterwards if anybody wants to chat or got any comments. Other than that, I'm going to let you get on. Tina, best of luck in your new roles as well. Thank you. Cheers. Thank you, Katie.
Bye. Thank you.